So in the last anime review, we talked about a series that had little to no real thought put into it. And this time around, we're talking about an anime that is kind of the opposite. I'll get into what that means as we go on. But before we go any further, I'm just going to say this. I don't really know how I feel about this show in one way or another, which is kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing, I don't know. So this is going to be very impromptu. I'm just going to bring up whatever comes to me, which honestly, as far as I can tell, seems to be how most people talk about today's anime. I don't even know what I can bring up that isn't spoilery. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give a brief little snippet, and then we'll just get right on to the head scratching on what the hell is this show. So today's anime is Saekano, a harem comedy spoof thing. I can't even really go into that much because even that kind of ruins one of the show's smarter ideas. Basically, this is a comedy about four kids who want to make a visual novel. They form this group and they all work on different parts, and it's just kind of about the crazy shenanigans that go on this 26 episode journey. It is very funny. Let me make that clear. There is some great humor, but it doesn't come from where you think it's going to come from. It more comes from a very smart script, very witty dialogue, and the occasional good slapstick gag, because I, like most people, want to see the main character impaled. That being said, though, the series has some really big pacing problems. The main character is extremely annoying and unlikable, and the second season feels overly long, tacked on, and wanders around while losing the show's direction. So that's why I want to stop with giving a non-spoiler review here, because honestly, you kind of really need to decide for yourself if you want to watch this one. I don't think there's really a strong opinion anyone could give to sway somebody on this series. This series is very much roll the dice, see what happens, and I think you should check it out, but I can't guarantee really how you'll react to this one. Which is so strange, because it looks like it should be like every other harem ecchi type anime, especially because it was made by A1 Pictures. This is 2 A1 Pictures reviews in a row. But so now that that's done, let's get into the spoilers. First up, Saekano's title is really interesting, because the full title and its translation is How to Raise a Boring Girlfriend, which at first glance sounds extremely mean. Like, when you really think about it, it's a very rude title. Honestly, I assumed this was going to be kind of like My Fair Lady, where it's like whoever the main character tries to sort of take a girl who isn't interesting, make her interesting, and it backfires against him. I didn't know anything about the series going into it, and I just watched it with its second season coming out over the summer. So I really knew nothing going into it, just that people I knew did like it, so I figured it was worth giving a shot, especially because I don't watch a lot of these, and I do try to watch a variety of stuff. But basically, this is where the show gets really smart. Like, an insanely clever script is that the title is supposed to be mean, and it's also supposed to be wrong. And I mean wrong as in, like, no, that's not what's going on here. Because the title tells you just how full of himself and in his own little world the main character is, as long as two of the other characters, which is ingenious. It really is a clever idea because it tells you all you need to know about this series. This series is about addressing the new sort of nerd culture we're in. In this age where geek stuff is everywhere, which I love, we're getting a lot of nerds who have this mindset that they are better than everybody because they don't fit the society standards they think society has for them, and so therefore they look down on everybody. This is a thing. Obviously, if you've been on a YouTube comment section, I'm sure you've noticed this as well. This might be the first anime I've seen to address this in a way that is actually good. Like, it's legitimately intelligent about it, and the thing is that it doesn't pander to nerds like a lot of these kinds of anime do. It very much is saying this mindset is childish, which it is. You need to grow out of it because if you stay in this little box where you only surround yourself with people like you, and if you only surround yourself with your kinds of things, you're not going to have a very fun life. And this show addresses that and really does a lot with it. And I quite liked it for that reason, and it does well with some very interesting character dynamics. Our main character is Tomoya. He is annoying, he is insufferable, he is a stereotypical otaku who has no life or personality besides being an otaku, and for some weird reason he keeps attracting A-class hotties. The show knows this. The show knows he's not likable, and they don't frame him as likable. They really try to let you know that this guy is a douchebag. Like, they give him his redeeming traits and his redeeming moments, but for the most part, he's just a cunt. And that's risky. Like, that is not easy to do, because you're making it that your point of view character has a flawed mentality, and you're not supposed to like him for that. I never liked this guy, and honestly, this is where the show fails, because it doesn't work. He's just so insufferable, and he's loud and unpleasant and stuck up and full of himself. And I don't really think they did a lot with it. It's just so that way when there's slapstick, you want to see him get hurt. It kind of reminds me of the bird attack scene in Pole Blart Mall Cop 2, where it's only enjoyable because I just want this piece of shit to die. So yeah, there's that. But then you get where the show gets really smart, and you have the girlfriend, or the boring girlfriend, Kato, who is not boring. She's actually a lot of fun and really likable and entertaining, because she's basically just a series of one-liners. The whole thing about her is that where Tomoya is over the top, thinks too much of himself, and is an otaku, she is this down-to-earth, grounded. She thinks she's boring and she thinks she's uninteresting, and the show leads you to think that's where this is going, but it isn't. Like, she's fun, she's likable, she's relatable, she's enjoyable. And I like the idea that she's also kind of living with this mentality of the standards life sets for herself, that she thinks she is boring and she doesn't stand out as much, when by the end of the first season, like, she's what's getting you through some of this. Oh god, her one-liners in this are awesome. You really gotta see it for yourself. And I love sort of the ideas she brings up and the idea of the character. You have a lot of great meta discussions within the show that just come from someone who's very sensible talking to people who have no sense. And I thought it really worked, and it did a great job of allowing you to see that there is no bad guy. There is no, this person thinks the wrong way just because of who they are. There is, people can think the wrong way because of the mindset they put them in, but it's not just because you are one way, you automatically are something. There's also a couple other characters, but honestly, they're just kind of enablers for the harem. They're fine, they're entertaining, but all in all, if they weren't there, I don't think they would have done too much, which sucks because I liked the blonde girl, but what did she do? As for the rest of the series, it looks good. I could have done without as much of the ecchi shots, but I understand that it's kind of like Food Wars. When you have a script this sort of trying to be smart and clever, you need something to bring in the people who don't care just to get in the ratings. I understand this. I could have done without it, though. Then we get to this, and the first season is basically just like I said. It's them wanting to make this visual novel because Tomoya sees Kato and thinks that she's the ultimate visual novel protagonist, so he tries to turn her into that. And it's clever because it's very obvious that what's happened here is he's experiencing his first real crush on a girl, but he doesn't know how to acknowledge this. He doesn't understand this because he's just so full of himself. And it's kind of a neat idea because you sort of see the workaround, and the show lets you figure all this out on your own, which I always have a lot of respect for. So I quite liked that. And then you get on to the second season, and I kind of didn't like this as much. There's some very funny moments, but a lot of season 2 is very all over the place. It tries to give the other two main girls of the show more screen time and more to do, but in trying to give them more time, it kind of cheapens what's going on. First up, the visual novel they're working on does not seem like a fun game. It doesn't seem interesting. It doesn't seem entertaining. But and in the first season, it's played for jokes. But then in the second season, we spend so much time on them making this thing. And it is just not very interesting. They try to have these sort of story arcs going back to the main point of the show, that because the two other girls are stuck and set in their ways like Tomoya, they can't really move forward and become better people either. But at that point, it just felt very redundant to me. As for other stuff in the second season, Kato weirdly doesn't do a lot because the other two need to get focus. This is always the problem in harems, is that you can only focus on what's the interesting characters for so long because you have to develop everyone else. I enjoyed stuff with these two, but when all was said and done, I really thought they were a hindrance because Kato doesn't get next to any one-liners in the second season. She doesn't do a lot. She just kind of comes in and out, and that was a real shame because that's what I liked. And even when they tried to work Kato in with other characters, they didn't do it. There's this thing that her and the blonde girl are going to have a friendship, which I thought could have been really nice because the blonde girl, as we see in the show, doesn't get to be who she is. She can't just be an otaku with her friends because that's still a thing for some reason. So it was sort of neat to see that she could have a friend who she could relate to on all levels of her life, but then they never did anything with it. Or the black-haired girl with the big boobs. They made it seem like she was going to have this very deep backstory, and then they never did anything with it. And then there's a third girl in the harem they never do anything with. There's a subplot about a jerk who steals material or something, and that never goes anywhere. And it really even hurts a scene that could have been emotional with the blonde, but they ruined it. Oh, and then there's a last-minute villain who's introduced in the second-to-last episode who does absolutely nothing. And also you could tell this show ran out of budget towards the end. And yeah, that's kind of it. It feels like there was so many intelligent ideas they wanted to work in here. I think they lost themselves in it, and I think the show as a whole suffers. I think the show is better for the sum of its parts than as a whole, but what is there is really interesting, and I like that in the end, it turns out Tomoya's feelings for Kato are not reciprocated. They sort of built it up that maybe Kato, even though Tomoya treats her terribly, that she would like the attention she gets from him or something like that, like you see in a lot of these types of anime. But no, at the end there, she really doesn't like him, and it's kind of insinuated she only kept up with all this just to see where it went because it just entertained her, which is awesome. And good for you, Kato. You deserve better than this little cock. But all in all, I think Saekano is, as much as I hate to admit it, a failed experiment. That being said, I'm glad they tried this. I'm glad A1 Pictures went with such a smart script. I'm glad they hired a creative team with ambition. I'm glad they tried to do something really good. And you know what? If I had to choose between watching a failed experiment or just a generic hits all the marks you expect and does everything without really putting any creativity into it, like a Fuka or a Knights and Magic or a Fuka. I hate Fuka. I'd go with this a million times over. Like, I'm glad I watched this. I'm glad I had the experience I did. I'm glad I was able to think about the things the show talks about. I'm glad it tried to be intelligent. And you know what? I think a lot of people would probably have the same opinion as me. I don't know if that would mean ultimately you like it or didn't like it, but at the end of the day, I think this is an anime for everyone to check out. I think, and you know what, watch it with friends. I think you could really have some interesting discussions. I imagine if you're baked, this show would be awesome. But what did you think? In the comment section below, give me your thoughts on Saekano, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, or any anime you want me to talk about next or whatever. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and we'll see how the rest of the season goes.